This happened a few years ago around mid-November. My mother and I love being outside and going for walks. This night in particular was freezing, but we decided we wanted to go out for a quick walk. As we walked back home, we went down this one street that we use all the time. It's a neighborhood street that leads to the main street, then back into our neighborhood. We get halfway down the street when I hear a dog bark over the music on my phone. I turned it off and turned to look for the dog because I love dogs, and I wasn't aware there was a big dog on the street. I know quite a few people on the street, and I know which houses have dogs. Most of the people on the block have small dogs or cats. This came from a house that didn't have a dog, let alone a big dog. I spun around and saw a big dark mass just feet from me. If he stopped 2 more feet, he would have been able to grab me. I immediately felt weird and started speed walking back to my mom, who at that point didn't realize I stopped. I turned off my phone and whispered to her that I thought we were being followed. She turned around and grabbed my arm and told me there were 2 men right behind us. We started walking in a zigzag pattern, and sure enough, they followed our every step. Once they caught on that we knew, one of the dudes started to make small chit-chat with us.
Awfully late for y'all to be walking, huh?
I swear his voice sounded like the definition of their sirens' voices, luring sailors to their doom. He continued asking questions to us. My mom kept walking and replying with quick replies. From the sound of his voice, I knew we were in danger, so I went to dial 911. But instead, my mom told me to call my dad as he would be able to get to us quicker because we were almost home. We got to the busy street and looked behind us to see them speed walking to us. We decided to take a risk and ran in the middle of the street as cars passed on either side of us. We ran across again and met my dad on the other side. We looked across the street and both men were gone. We got into the car and searched the streets, but these guys disappeared into what seemed like thin air. I asked my mom if we would have been kidnapped if I hadn't heard the dog. She asked me what dog. I asked her how she didn't hear this massive dog bark, especially with how good her hearing is. I still have no clue what it was I heard, but I do know that it most likely saved my life. My story took place last November in a large city in the southern USA. Needless to say, it's now the reason I have a concealed carry permit. I was leaving my office alone last November very late at night. I work with a very exclusive clientele, including many celebrities and high-level executives, so late nights are often very common. There's a gas station across my office and an international airport close by, so this is a well-lit, busy area with a fire department next door. I pulled into the gas station to get some gas as I live about 45 minutes from my office and have no problems. We get to the red light and turn onto the busy bypass around the city, and there's an Infiniti G35 following behind me. No worries, it's a busy intersection and the car was at the gas station with me, so I just brushed it off. I kept driving and I started noticing every time I switched lanes, so did the driver of the Infiniti. I was getting a little unnerved, but thought maybe he was just using me as a speed shield as the cops are really heavy on that particular road. So I slow down and move to the right lane. He follows. He's staying behind me and riding my bumper. Okay, that's weird. I got off at the next exit, not mine, but I really couldn't shake the feeling he was following me. I pull up into a gas station and sure enough, he pulls in the spot next to me. At that point, I slam my car in reverse and nope the hell back on the bypass. I look in my rearview mirror and he's hot on my heels. I get off at the next exit and make a series of random turns, taking back roads to the interstate, and sure enough, he's still following me. By this point, I'm on the phone with my boyfriend, scared out of my mind. I'm alone, and there's some guy following me throughout the city in a sketchy part of town. I hung up the phone with my boyfriend and called 911, but I'm now on the interstate, so Metro PD has to transfer to Highway Patrol. By this time, I think I've lost him because he saw me on the phone and went around. I get to the next exit, and there's this Infiniti on the shoulder of the road. He spots my car and swoops in behind me again. Fortunately, I've spoken to Highway Patrol, and an officer is waiting 3 exits up at a gas station for me. I haul ass to the gas station because it's the only option I have. I exit the interstate and pull into the gas station with the Infiniti hot on my heels until he sees the cop car. He cuts out of the gas station and hops back on the interstate the opposite way. We were going back towards the city instead of out of it. A truck driver pulls in right after that, and I can't thank him enough. He noticed the guy jump in behind me and heard the call to highway patrol over the scanner, so he stayed behind him to make sure I was safe. Turns out he was a former military police officer and got a full plate number and gave it to the officer. Turns out he was a rapist following women home from work and raping them in their driveway and home, and he was escalating in his level of violence. The girl he raped the night before was in critical condition from the beating she sustained. So to the truck driver that was concerned, thank you. I hope we meet again so I can properly thank you for helping me. At the time this happened, I was 13 years old. So this happened 2 years ago, and I was fairly naive. I was a major introvert, and only friends with a few people in my class. I wanted to be social, but I preferred to be alone and read or write. Classic nerd things. In early November, I got a text on my phone that was from a few classmates whose phone numbers I had, and around one or two I couldn't recognize. It was a group chat asking if we wanted to hang out at the night near a park at our school. My parents, being strict and paranoid, would never let me go. Luckily, or what I thought was luck, they were heading out for an overnight trip. They would be back around 4 in the morning. Everything fell into place. Once my parents left around 8ish, I ran out the door and made my way to the park. The one thing I made sure to do was lock the door. My parents were paranoid after all, and it was the biggest thing that they engraved in me. Once I arrived at the park, I noticed a creepy figure near the edge of the woods. No one else seemed to notice it, and I already had enough reputation as a weirdo who was true crime obsessed. I didn't mention it. The night drew on and on. I was having the time of my life, ignoring the gut feeling I had telling me to run. Every so often, I would look over my shoulder and the man would still be standing there. Around 9:45, 4 out of the 10 people had to leave due to their curfew. It was getting cold and was nearly pitch black with a few streetlights every so often. The rest of us decided to go as well since it felt more eerie and quiet. The place we were hanging out at was a field that was fenced in with a few exits and entrances. A large wide field with a small park in the back and our giant middle school behind us. The front of the field faced the empty roads and the right and left sides were surrounded by forest. All of the people left were getting picked up by cars, meaning that they went the opposite way of the road since that's where the parking lot was. The man stood by the right forest road exit that I needed to take to get home. I walked away from my group and tried to steady my heavy breathing. I didn't want to be paranoid, but all the true crime I listened to was catching up to me. The man was probably early 40s to late 30s, dark hair with a beard. He was probably around 5'9", but at the time seemed like 6 foot. He stood about 10 feet from the exit I had to take, so when I got close enough to it, I ran for about 30 feet through the exit and through the woods. Once I felt safe enough, I started just to quickly walk through the woods, or at the least get to the road. I heard a snap and crunch from behind me. I stopped walking for a second and quickly checked over my shoulder. Around 15 feet behind me stood the very same man. He was walking slowly behind me, almost as if he was trying not to be suspicious, but it only made my fear worse. I turned around and quickly walked so quickly I was basically jogging. I lived about 10 minutes away from the park we had hung out at, and I wasn't athletic enough to run home. After around 7 minutes of walking fast, I was in my neighborhood. I knew that I could run to my house if I had to, so I checked to see if he was still trailing behind me. To my horror, he was only 5 feet away. I ran faster than I ever ran before. I could hear his footsteps behind me thumping across the concrete as he ran too. I dove down an alleyway I knew well, and tried to lose him in a park, making my way home longer. I could hear his heavy breath followed by his footsteps as he tried to keep up. I cut through the houses, backyards, and front yards. I finally made it to my house and flew up the steps. I looked behind me and he had just arrived at the bottom of my stairs. I unlocked the door and burst through it, shoving it closed behind me, and I heard him hit the door with his whole body. I ran around the house and locked all the windows, turned off all the lights, and hid in my bedroom with a kitchen knife just in case he got in. He didn't, luckily. If this was a better world, that's where my story would end. But it doesn't. After a few months, I haven't really told anyone what's happened since I don't want to get in trouble with my parents for sneaking out or anything. I didn't go out with anyone or any group anymore, and my loner status returned. I began to write horror stories as a coping mechanism and never went out past 7 p.m. It was around February when a classmate of mine was sharing a story of some random man following her home on the bus. She described him almost the exact same as the man who had chased me home. Another girl mentioned that he sounded like the guy who stood outside the school and tried to follow her home. I didn't join in, but everyone agreed that he was just a weird guy. He was kind of forgotten, and eventually I moved on too. Around May, I was getting ready to walk to school when my mom pulled me aside and showed me a picture of a man. The guy who stalked me, actually. She told me that he had been arrested 2 weeks ago for sexually assaulting a child and had escaped last night. She told me to keep an eye out for him and to call the cops if I saw him. I was shaking the whole time I walked to school. It haunts me to know that if he had caught me, I would most likely be in her position or even dead. So creepy nighttime stalker who liked to hunt down young girls and sexually assault them. Let's not meet.